Hi, this is Mashnu, and here is part 9 of the series of practical endgames. Now this time I've chosen for a rook endgame that was played in 1997 between Boris Spassky and the women grandmaster and former world champion Su Chen. Here it's white to move, and Boris Spassky didn't play the correct plan in this position. I must say, rook endgames are very complex. They are not easy to manage. But if we look at this example, then perhaps some things may become clear. One of the most important things in the endgame, of course in every endgame, is the activity of the pieces and the activity of the kings especially. Here white played the move rook to h2. The idea, the plan of after rook to h2 is actually to force more or less the black rook to give a check on c1, and after giving this check then the king can be activated towards g3 and f4. Because if I move back here, in this position actually we can say that this rook is keeping the white king imprisoned on the first rank. So there is a logical idea after rook to h2. If the rook moves somewhere on this c file upward, so let's say a rook to c7 for example, then white simply places the rook on b2 behind his pass pawn, supporting the pass pawn, ready to advance, and has clear winning chances. What happened in the game was that here black did give the check on c1 and the king went to g2 as planned. But now something happened that Spassky probably underestimated, and that is the move f5. With f5, the fifth rank is being blocked, so the rook cannot go to h5 to defend the pawn on b5. Now moving the king to g3 would lead to rook to b1. Attacking this pawn, and the rook cannot defend it by going to h5. So here there is only one way to try to defend this b5 pawn, that is to move the rook to h1, and that's what happened in the game. Spassky played rook to h1. But now, of course, first a check on c2, and after the king moves, rook to b2, and now this pawn is going to be captured. So in this position the players agreed a draw. Quite disappointing for white. Let's go back to the initial position, because there was another plan possible. Instead of rook to h2, the other plan was to bring the king towards the black rook. So to walk to f1, e1, d1. If the rook goes to b2, then go to c1, forcing the rook to move to b4, and then walk upward with the king to c2, c3. If the rook moves, then to c4, c5, and support with the king this pass pawn. Let's have a look how this could look like. King to f1. Let's say king g6, king e1, rook to b2, king d1. Here, let's say move like f6, and then king to c1. The rook can go to b4, and then we go to c2. If, for example, king to g7, there's not much that black can do. We walk with the king to c3. And here, if the rook goes to b1, then we have achieved what we wanted, and that's to walk with the king towards our own pass pawn, so we support it, and then this is not very difficult to win. Now if in this position, so after king to c3, the rook doesn't go to b1 but goes to, for example, f4, like this, then we can start already walking with the pawn, because the rook cannot go to b4 to prevent it. It can take here on f3, of course, but then king to c4. The rook cannot go to b3 to stop the pawn. It could go to e3, so after b7 the rook can go to e8, but then simply with the king we walk towards the pawn and then promote. So this is one for white. Now let's go back just a few moves, because here after king to d1 there is another option for black. Instead of playing f6, he could play rook to f2, trying to capture this f3 pawn. In that case, and that's the importance of this rook on h5, he could play rook to f5, defending the pawn on f3. And if black plays here, for example, h5, with the idea that this pawn cannot be taken by the pawn, because then the king takes the rook, and the rook cannot take on h5 because then rook takes f3 follows. But here the king, the white king, can simply go to e1 first. And now after this rook moves, for example, to b2, then we can take with the rook on h5, and this pawn is not falling. So what can we learn from this example? I'll go back to the initial position here. Well, that the plan that Spassky tried had a logic, but actually the most, let's say, the most direct and the easiest plan was missed by Spassky, and that is moving this king towards the rook to then activate it using the c file. And in the game, after rook to h2, we can see how subtle actually things work in an endgame. This move f5 is so easy to miss with white. It's beautiful in the sense that this pawn is blocking this fifth rank. Also, if this pawn is taken, then the white pawn will be blocking the fifth rank. So here, for example, rook to c5 is already winning one of both pawns back. So if we defend this one, then the rook can take. Oh, sorry, this is not the correct thing, because we have f6 with check. So here first king to f6, is that correct? No, the king must defend this one. King to h7, that's correct. King to h7. And now if b6, rook to b5, and then we take the b pawn. You see how tricky these endgames are. Always these tactical ideas that we might miss. Well, I hope you found this interesting, and perhaps you would like to put this position on your chessboard and see if you can find some more interesting variations, because it's impossible to, in a video of let's say 10 minutes, to cover all the possibilities. So I'm just explaining these two main plans that were possible. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on YouTube.